Hey there, this is teacher Julian from Phoebo Kids Art Academy and welcome to another amazing art class. Today in our class, we're going to be learning how to draw a house. And let's go ahead and take a look at my desk so we can take a closer look at what we're going to be creating today. So for our picture, we're going to be using supplies that you normally use in school. So markers, colored pencil, watercolors, and crayons. You're also going to need a pencil and probably a permanent marker and an eraser for our project for today. And we're going to be learning a lot about perspective today in our picture, so just be prepared for that. And let's go ahead and get started. So for our project, we're going to just jump right into the final draw. We're not going to practice this. We're actually going to do this on the paper that we mean to do all of our coloring on today. So go ahead and just make sure, if you can help it, maybe take out like a thick piece of construction paper. Or if you don't have construction paper, that's okay. You can just use what you have, but you are going to try your best to use what we've got here today. Now, I'm going to be using a Sharpie to draw, but I want you to use a pencil. This is because pencil doesn't just show up super well on my camera, but I want you to use a pencil so that way you can erase and adjust your lines. So first things first, we are going to draw in where we want our house to be today. Now we want our house to be right about here on our paper. So not quite halfway, but right about here. We're going to start by drawing in the garage area. So for this, I want us to start by actually drawing in the roof. So you're going to go to the top of your paper here and you're going to decide how big you want it to be. And you're going to draw an upside down V shape, 2 diagonal lines. Now, if you want this to be a picture of your own house, you might want to have a reference photo of your house nearby. That way you can draw it more accurately. We're going to draw the same line underneath and connect the ends. Next, all we're going to do is draw a straight line down and a straight line down, and then connect across. So we have this garage area here. Now we're actually going to draw in the garage. Oh, and by the way, if you ever need to pause the video so that way you can draw your lines or just, do some catch up, that's fine. We're going to draw 2 lines. We want them to be about the same size. And then you're going to connect across. So again, it's just another square. You can add more details to this. You could add in like a top design or something. You can add in some panels of wood. I'll leave the detail in your hands, but you can just add in what you like. You can add in the garage windows. And you can kind of set the tone for what you want the design of your house to look like. Some garages have like these little panes here that help it move up and down. And now we're going to draw the rest of the house behind it. So for the rest of the house, we're going to draw another big kind of V shape right here. Start maybe right about here. You can draw a little point. Then you're going to draw a diagonal line down, quite far this time. And then a diagonal line that goes into our garage. Mimic those lines again. And then close off this side here. You're also going to draw just a straight line down. And usually with a garage port, it is further out than the rest of the house. So we don't want this line to go all the way down to where our horizontal line meets our garage. Instead, we want it to be slightly shorter, and we're going to draw a horizontal line coming in like so. Now, you can design the front of your house however you want. I want it to look a little similar to what I have here. I'm going to draw, again, sort of like this. Maybe this is like a piece of wood or something, a support beam, I'm not sure. That kind of comes across like that. Maybe the front door is right here. You can add like a little window on it if you want, a doorknob. I kind of want to have these pillars in front as well. So I'll add these to the front. And I want to have a big window. You can design your windows however you like. You can add lots of detail. You can make them very simple windows. It's really up to you. I think I also want a really big window at the top of the house here. Brings in lots of light. So our house is kind of in like the midground of our picture today, which means it's not quite all the way in the front, not quite all the way in the back. Let's go ahead and decide on some things that we want to be just in front of the house. So things like maybe bushes, a garden, of course, the driveway. For our driveway today, we don't want to draw two straight lines down because that actually doesn't make any sense. When you have something that's in perspective like this, we actually are going to draw diagonal lines because it's getting bigger the closer it gets to us, and at the same time, it's getting farther away from us when we look at it. So we want it to look as if we're walking up towards it. To do this, you're just going to start from right about here on your paper. You're going to draw a diagonal line down and a diagonal line down. And again, you want this line to get bigger the closer it gets towards you. Same thing, other side. So this way it looks more in perspective. You can also add things like bushes or like a little garden patch over here. I'm going to add in like a little bush and close that off. Just remember, when you start adding in bushes and details, make sure to erase any part of your house that's going through it. I'm just going to mark it with a marker so that way you know what to erase since I can't erase today. I'm also going to draw like a bit of the walkway right here. And then I think I want bushes to kind of overtake this corner of the yard. Now, as the bushes start to go back, we want to draw them smaller and smaller and smaller. So that way they look like they're kind of curving around. Let's talk a little bit about the foreground. When things are in the foreground, that means that they're closest to us as the viewer. Things in the foreground are lower on the paper and bigger. I want there to be a patch of rose bushes in the foreground, but you could add something else there, like a mailbox or a car. Just know, since it's in the foreground, it needs to be really big and low on the paper. I'm going to have some fun drawing in some curved lines to make rose bushes. And to make a rose, I'm just going to make them very simply today by drawing a circle and then a swirl on the inside. You could do different flowers here. Maybe if you have like a gate in your front yard, you can draw that instead. Just make sure to draw it really big since it's in the front and closest to us. So we can tell already that these bushes are closer to us because of how big they are in comparison to these. And we can tell that the garage driveway is getting closer to us because it's getting bigger too. Let's go ahead and add in our background. We're going to add in a little hedge. So we're going to draw a horizontal line and a horizontal line. To make a hedge, you just draw some curved lines. A hedge is just a bush, kind of acts like a wall. Now our trees that we're going to add in. I'm going to add in trees, but you could add in something else into your background. But when things are in your background, they are smaller and higher on the paper. So these trees, we already know they're going to be pretty big, but in comparison, they're going to be pretty small. You can draw your trees however you like. I'm making kind of these big fluffy trees today. To make these branches, I'm really just drawing lots of jagged lines. And to make the leaves, I'm drawing some curved lines to connect. I'll do kind of the same thing on the other side until I'm happy with how everything looks. And there we have the house. Now, of course, you can draw in more things to your heart's desire. Again, if you're making this look like more of your own house, you can add in other details, light fixtures, lamps. I think I wanted to add in another bush right there, for example, and I would have to erase any part of the house that's going through it. Once you're happy with how your house looks, I want you to go ahead and put your pencil away, take out a permanent marker, and outline all your pencil lines. Now this might take a little while because you've added probably lots of detail. So pause the video and then resume once you are ready to continue on your coloring steps after you've outlined all your pencil lines. All right, if you're resuming the video, I'm gonna assume you're done. And we're gonna go ahead and take a look at my picture here. This is with everything outlined and with a couple other little details added in, like stones on the driveway. So our first step is we're actually going to use our markers, and we're just gonna fill in a couple of details in our picture here and there. I'm gonna be using brown for my house today, but you could use really whatever kind of colors you want. I'm gonna use brown to fill in the roof, on both the garage and on the main house. I do recommend just trying to do these all in one big stroke because it's pretty fast. I'm also going to fill in the wooden pillars I added in, as well as my door. I'm also going to fill in this here, and of course my door. I'm trying my best to go around the doorknob. Again, you can use whatever colors you want. I'm kind of going for almost like an late summer to early autumn color scheme for my picture today. So I'm going to be using lots of browns and oranges and greens. All right. I'm also going to fill in the window frame with my brown. And I'll probably also fill in these little parts of the window of the garage. Since I already have the brown in hand, I'm also going to fill in my tree trunk and tree branches. If you have another part of your picture that's a similar color to your marker, you can of course just use that marker now to fill it in. I'm sure you have lots of other details that you probably want to add in. All right. Now I will say this house does not look like the house that I live in or the house that I grew up in. The house that I grew up in, we have Christmas trees, old Christmas trees planted in our front yard. They're really big now because they're from quite a few years ago. I wonder if you also have trees in your front yard, what kind of birds visit them. All right, so there's my brown. I'm now also going to use an orange to apply some of like a brick texture to the house. This is going to get colored over with watercolor later, which will make kind of this really fun effect. You don't have to do this per se, especially if your house is not made out of brick. But I'm going to use short horizontal strokes kind of on like this top part here, and a little bit onto like the sides of the house over here. And a little bit on that front of the garage. It kind of looks like the house has tiger stripes right now, doesn't it? But in reality, these are kind of bricks that we're making. Now I'm going to use some green. I'm going to use a darker green for this. And in the bushes in the midground, I'm not really going to fill them in right now. I am just kind of outlining them with the green. Now, these bushes, if you had bushes, you could turn them into flower bushes as well. Maybe like a honeysuckle bush, if you've ever seen one of those. I'm going to do the same thing for these little bushes that are in the front yard next to the garage. Okay, those are all nice and filled in. And now I'm actually going to switch greens, you guys. I'm going to use this slightly lighter green. If you don't have a lighter green, that's okay. You could do this step with like color pencil, or you can just skip it altogether. I just happen to have a slightly lighter green with my Crayola markers. And I'm going to use this to outline the hedge, the tree, and I'm going to use it to add in a couple of fun little details inside the tree, namely leaves. If you want to add fruit, I would recommend adding fruit in with either your color pencil or your crayon. Because we're going to be putting watercolor over our trees later, you don't really want the fruit to blend away. So once you have them outlined, you can make little leaf shapes all on the inside of the tree. To make a leaf shape, it's just a curved line and a curved line. Curved line, curved line, curved line, curved line. Okay. With that, we are now going to switch materials and we're going to break out our color pencils just to do a little bit of work on the house, but not too much. We're going to use our color pencils to also add just a little bit of sketching in where we want some shading to be. I am going to use this kind of medium brown. Any brown will do if you don't have like a specific kind of brown. And I'm going to fill in the windows on all of the house. Okay. Get that nice and filled in. I do recommend holding higher on your color pencil. This will help you press lighter and it won't hurt your hand as much. I'm going to do the same color on the windows for the garage. Again, you can choose different colors if you like. These are just the colors I'm choosing because I have specific colors in mind that I want to use. So like colors that look good with orange and greens. I'm also going to use a little bit of dark brown. You could also use a black color pencil if that's what you have. Pressing light, I'm going to add a little bit of this underneath the roof on both sides, just to give it a little bit of dimension and shadow. We're going to be adding more shadow later with our watercolor because it kind of goes faster with our watercolor, but we can feel free to add some of it now too. I'm also going to add it underneath this part here since it's a little bit out from like the house. All right. If you want, you could even take a black or a gray color pencil, and depending on what color you want your kind of patio to be, you can even add a little bit of shading onto here too with your color pencil. And you could use your color pencil for more, but like I said, I'm going to be doing a majority of this picture with watercolor. We're going to use one more material, and that is our crayons. Now, I have a different kind of set for us today. I'm using oil pastels. They work really similar to crayons, so don't worry, just use what you have. These ones, they work very much the same. And what we're going to do is we are going to add some texture to stuff, and we're going to fill some things in. If you added something to your foreground here, I want you to fill in the tiny details in with your crayons. For me, since I did roses, I'm going to fill in my roses. You can use whatever colors you like. I'm going to use lots of warm colors because I love warm colors. But you could do whichever set of colors suits you, or your house maybe. Again, if you've added something different, then you can just fill that in. Remember, do the small details with the oil or with the crayons. Just filling that in. And then for my last color, I'm going to do kind of like an orangey peach color. Something that looks pretty similar to that brown we used for like the windows, but ever so slightly lighter. It's almost like a peach, but not quite. Now, after we're done filling in our small details, we are going to outline the objects in our foreground. So for me, that's bushes, which means I'm going to use a shade of green. But for you, maybe that's something else. Since it's in the foreground, things in the foreground are usually darker in color. So I use lighter greens in my background, darker colors in the foreground. I'm going to take my dark green color. If you don't have different shades of green, that's okay too. Just use the same green. Or you could use your color pencils, or you can use your marker for this part. You got lots of options. Using the same color of green is just fine. If you want to make it darker though, a sneaky way to do that is first put your green down and then go over it with blue. Especially like a dark blue crayon or just a regular blue crayon. That will make the green look darker. All right. If you did bushes or plants like me, we're also going to do what we did to our trees with our crayons right now. So you're going to take your crayon and you're going to add little leaves to the foreground. Bushes here. You can add as many as you like. I'm going to add that many. And then we can also now begin to add in some texture. So you can break your crayon in half and you can unwrap it using whatever green you like. If you have grass in your front yard, you can pinch and pull, moving in vertical strokes to add some texture for that grass. We'll be going over this later with watercolor. If you want it to be dirt, or maybe you have rock, you could choose a gray or a brown. I am in fact going to do that for our stone pathway here for the driveway. So I'm going to just take like this kind of gray color. If you don't have gray, you could also use brown. I'm going to add that there. All right, and that'll be our last step with our crayons. Our final material is going to be using watercolor. Now, if you want, it might be good to have like a plastic plate so that way you can mix different colors together. If you have a mixing tray, even better. I like to work from the foreground back. You can also work from background to foreground. Usually with paintings, you want to work background to foreground first, but our background is a very small part of our picture, so we can go the opposite way. I'm going to take my green and I'm going to paint in over my bushes. Now you can choose whatever color is most appropriate for your picture. If you did like a car, do whatever color you want. If you happen to have a blue-green watercolor, it kind of looks like blue and green or a turquoise that's really dark. You can especially use that for the bushes in your foreground because remember, things in the foreground are usually darker and more detailed than things in our background and even in the midground. Now because I have used an oil pastel, you have used a crayon, these materials do not budge, they don't move, they don't mix when water or watercolor is put on top of them. So all those areas where you put leaves and flowers or whatever details you did, it's going to stay put. It's not going to move. Sticking with our green colors, I'm now going to just use my regular green here and I'm going to fill in my grass. If you did dirt or you have rocks, you can fill in with a brown or a tan or a gray or whatever color you want. I guess if you wanted to make your front yard pink, I couldn't stop you. This is a realistic picture, or at least the house that I'm making is realistic. Maybe you made like a fantasy house of your dreams. And now I'm going to fill in my driveway. I'm going to fill this in with a little bit of black, but I'm not going to do a lot. I'm really only going to use like a little bit because I don't want it to be super duper dark. So I'm really spreading that color out so that way it's not too intense. And just using a little bit, not trying to do too much here. Fortunately, that kind of gray color that I put down is going to keep that in check. Again, when it's closer to us, we will have it be darker. All right. Now I'm going to fill in my little pathways. Again, very carefully using my brush. I'm going to fill in the pathway here and here. You can do this with watercolor or you could do this with colored pencil. I like the way that it looks with watercolor, but you could also do this again with just a different material. It's completely up to you. And you can fill in your bushes. Because we did our bushes with an outline of watercolor, or excuse me, not watercolor, Crayola marker, oh my gosh. The Crayola marker will blend a little bit with your different plants that you added, which we want. They'll be working together today. Then I can fill in the hedge on either side. And then I will fill in the tree. Now for the tree, I'm going to use green, just a little bit. I'm using this lighter green that I have. It's a yellow green. You could of course do this with a regular green too, but just add more water with your brush to make it lighter. Be mindful of your tree branches as they will want to blend a little bit with your watercolor. So just be careful to go around at least the branches, but you can go right on top of the leaves. They'll blend a little bit, which is what we want to happen for the leaves, but the branches, not so much. All right. And then we'll take a little bit of yellow paint. We really don't need a lot. And we can add that on top in some areas. Be careful when you do this because your paper could be brittle. If you're really worried about the paper tearing, I would just wait for this whole area to dry first, and then add your yellow layer of watercolor on top. Before we paint in the sky, let's do a little shading on our house. We won't do too much, but I'm going to choose a color that kind of matches my house, which is this yellowy orange color. You could also do brown or whatever color you think matches for you. I'm going to go over this spot here where we put that brown color pencil, just to kind of bring that shadow out a little more. I'm also going to add a little bit of this here on this top part of this house that's coming out. I can even add some to the part where we added shading earlier. That brown marker will kind of help blend it a little more. And I can kind of go in a tapping motion if I want it to look like there's even more brick that's been like subdued in other parts of the house. Or if I want it to be a little less harsh with the lines. So I'm kind of just tapping my watercolor ever so slightly to make it look like the house is a little bit filled in there. I'm going to just straight up fill in my garage door though with that paint. Lastly, I'll fill in my sky. You can do your sky whatever color you like. Think of like whatever color a sky would be. For our picture today, I'm going to make it yellow. So maybe it's sunset, maybe it's sunrise. Whatever the case, just make sure that you're doing long strokes for as long as you can help it, and using the very top of your brush to get into those small areas. Do a last little look around your picture. See if there are spots where you might want to add some like shadows. I like to add shadows underneath like the bush areas or onto the hedges. You can even add some below here in the foreground. And after you're happy with your shadows and any further details, that is the end of our picture today. Now we've made a little bit of a mess with our watercolor, so just be sure to clean that up afterwards, and that completes our project. I hope you had fun making your own house today, and I will see you again very soon for another art project. Bye for now, everybody!